dropping.
4 out of every 5 companies are going to be gone.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Mike, here on the NYHIA network. We're very excited to kind of see what you're doing in the cannabinoid industry and then also in fiber and grain, because you have a very wide swath of knowledge and experience. For those that don't know you, could you give a little bit of background about who you are, kind of how you came to the hemp industry and kind of what you do in the hemp industry?
Sure, Aidan. I operate a company here in Buffalo called Plant Science Laboratories. We are a 21 CFR Part 111 third-party audited dietary supplement ingredient manufacturing facility. So we produce powders that go into capsules here at this plant. I've been doing that for about 30 years. We've got a staff of 15 here, and we got involved in the hemp industry here in New York. We were one of the first companies to actually get a permit. We had permit number 7, and I think the first 5 were the universities. But I actually been involved with cannabis for a long time, and we saw hemp as a opportunity to expand on what we're already working on here at the plant, and got involved a few years ago, and in a couple of different manners. We were growing some hemp. We had a big CO2 extraction unit here all last year, and now our big focus is we've developed a unique process to turn cannabinoid extracts and distillates into free-flowing powder to go into capsules. So that's our focus here. That's what we do. We make capsules. We put capsules in bottles and put labels on them. So that's our big focus for 2020. We're no longer growing hemp. We may be extracting some more hemp later this season, but currently we've got a lot of material sitting in house.
Gotcha. Very cool. So essentially your main focus is to take the cannabinoids that are extracted from the plant and then distilled and then turn them into a powder so that they can go into a pill form.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so we're able to, we've got a bunch of extract material we manufactured here last year. We're converting now, but we can actually convert this material using somebody else's distillate or crude material and then package it for them. So that's our focus. We see a big space available in that part of the market because there aren't too many people that really know how to make powder to go in capsules. And so that's our big thing here now. And it seems to be picking up very quickly. So pretty happy.
Interesting. So what is the benefit of turning into a powder versus having it as a liquid, or is it is it digestible at that point in time, or?
It goes through a different digestive pathway. So it's actually, you take a tincture and spray it in your mouth, you almost have immediate absorption. If you ingest cannabis, a lot of it is destroyed in your stomach by your stomach acid before it gets to your intestines where it's absorbed. We have capsules that are acid resistant so that the cannabis compounds get into your intestines where they're digested and absorbed. So it's a very subtle but long-term effect. So it's a good way for someone who uses cannabis to keep a level of CBD in their bloodstream pretty constant throughout the day, which is especially helpful for somebody who may have a medical condition or dealing with some type of chronic pain.
Interesting. Wow, that's very cool. So in terms, maybe you don't want to get into too much of it because it might be proprietary, but in terms of the conversion from the cannabinoid extract to the actual powder, is there any loss in terms of like the cannabinoids that are contained or any of the terpenes or anything like that?
No, none whatsoever. What we're basically doing is standardizing CBD at a predetermined level in the powder. So it's easy to mix with other compounds. Say, for example, you wanted to do something that was good for sleep. You mix it with melatonin and chamomile extract. Well, they're all powders, so they mix together real good. Making capsules is far cheaper than making soft gels, significantly cheaper, and they run on faster equipment that doesn't cost as much. So it's a more efficient delivery mechanism.
Interesting. Cool. Yeah, the manufacturing price is cheaper, the delivery method is better, and you can mix it with a whole wide variety of things that you don't necessarily have to worry about the liquids matching up together.
Right, have to be in a liquid form.
Yeah.
Most nutritional products are in a dry powder form, so this matches up with what the market's used to.
Mm-hmm.
And
Gotcha.
people, taking tinctures or anything like that is not convenient for people. It's not something that people are used to. People are used to taking capsules. 85% of dietary supplements come in capsule form.
Wow.
So it's something that people are used to. It's very price competitive and doesn't have shipping issues. Soft gels, if they get too hot, they all stick together. So they have to go in refrigerated trucks. The manufacturing process is slow. You have high minimum volumes. There's a lot of advantages to going hard shell capsule.
Interesting.
You can be
Very
100%
cool.
organic too.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah. So you could use vegetable glycerin capsules.
Yeah, they
right?
actually have capsules now made out of tapioca maltodextrin. So that's what we're buying for our organic clients. So it's 100% organic capsule. Yeah.
Wow, that was very cool. That's interesting. Yeah, definitely the aspect of not having to completely retrain the customer to find a new product, because I mean they're already having to be retrained on the notion of taking CBD and like what is the difference, what is hemp, what is the difference between all these different cannabinoids, but then to also have to learn how to take a tincture and understanding what a tincture is and all this kind of stuff is just a whole other step on top of that. So like being able to put it into powder form allows them to have an easier access, easier knowledge base, no retraining.
Absolutely, and you don't have to deal with taste issues. You don't have to deal with it spilling, getting it on your clothes, in a woman's purse. I mean, there's all kinds of disadvantages. People carry capsules around their little vitamin packs every day, with the little sections where they put their vitamins. So this is something that, just falls in line with what the industry is pretty much used to, what the consumer wants.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely, it'll take things forward to kind of not exactly in that realm, but kind of in that realm. So, if you could you kind of explain to people what the difference between so like actually really quick question on that note. So, are your powders considered full spectrum, broad spectrum, or isolate?
We actually can make them out of a full spectrum crude extract, a broad spectrum extract, crude or a distillate of any type. The processes are slightly different, but yeah, we can achieve concentrations as high as 15% with good quality distillate material and still have a free-flowing powder. So it's more a limitation if you're into a full spectrum product to how much THC is in there.
Gotcha.
Typically find with New York grown hemp that standardized 5% CBD allows you to very consistently meet your THC limit, not be close to the threshold.
Gotcha. Interesting. So on that note, could you explain the difference between full spectrum, broad spectrum, and an isolate?
Sure. Full spectrum, you have pretty much done a straight extract process followed by a straight distillation process. You're not doing anything to modify the temperatures or the recovery aspects of the material. You're pretty much whatever your starting concentration of cannabinoids are in your plant, you're just concentrating them at the same ratios as existed in the plant. That's your full spectrum material. I think most people feel that full spectrum materials offer the most benefits because of the interaction of the CB1 and CB2 receptors with THC and how they're accentuated by it. So I think there's pretty good science behind that. Broad spectrum would be your THC compliant distillate type material that can be shipped across state lines because it would meet the 0.3% THC threshold. okay? And that material's been double or sometimes triple distilled at given temperature in order to recover a greater fraction of CBD and lose some of the THC. Now, you also lose some CBD in that process too. It's not an efficient process, but it does allow you to have a Farm Bill compliant material. And then isolate material has gone through further refinement with short path distillation primarily these days, but other people are doing it with chromatography, where you're actually removing the THC in total in order to allow that product to be taken by people who can't take THC because maybe they're a truck driver or fireman or government employee or whatever. We can make it out of any of those products. We don't do any work with isolate material here at our plant. Mm-hmm. Just full spectrum and broad spectrum.
Gotcha. Yeah, you want to get the
free. Yeah.
The full robust nature of the product, and
that's what our clients really want. And we're seeing more people who want a blended product where they get preferentially high CBC or CBN for their target product, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. All the other cannabinoids other than CBD. So kind of on that note, actually, what are some other cannabinoids that you kind of see either already starting to hit the market or kind of coming down the line that are non-euphoria causing? So like they don't get you high, like CBD, but they're different, that might be mixed into the batch and such.
Well, I think the street buzz right now is with CBG, and there was a fair amount of it put in last year, and we've got inquiries now to actually make 50-50 CBD CBG combination products, and I think those are very interesting. We're waiting for some to arrive, so it'll be our first chance to really experience it. But there's a lot of good science out there for the benefits of CBG, especially for people with chronic medical conditions. So we're seeing a real uptick in the amount of CBG seeds that are available and the amount of acreage that was put in last year. Prices are dropping. CBG hemp was up $300, $400 a pound. Now it's down to $50, $60. So it's more reasonable. And it'll be down in the $10 range here later in the year. I also have seen specialized seeds with high CBC, CBN concentration. Natural CBN, not degraded, chemically degraded CBN. So we're starting to see those pop up a little bit. And then there's a lot of random, very minor cannabinoid research going on right now, but I think that's going to be more geared toward pharma applications where the cost of material is not so price sensitive to the consumer market.
Absolutely. The consumer definitely has some issues with prices, and that's why we saw a lot of the aspects of people before the market started getting educated on the difference between hemp seed oil and CBD oil. And we had a lot of people, at least a lot of people came to me being like, oh, I can buy this $4 bottle of hemp oil versus this $40 bottle of hemp oil, and I'd much rather buy the $4 bottle of hemp oil. It's not the same thing.
That's the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, what we're seeing too is a very major price compression going on right now in the market. I think the days of $40 for 1,000 milligram tincture are over. I think it may persist for a little while, but with hemp prices being at $5 and $6 a pound, extraction rates dropping down to pretty much the same level, you're talking about the ability to deliver a milligram in a finished product form for the consumer on a wholesale level, $5. So really, you're going to see finished consumer products based on a $10 per 1,000 milligram basis here coming up. That's
incredible. That's incredible. I definitely, it's been interesting to watch. I mean, I'm not strictly in the CBD industry, but it's been interesting to watch the progression of the change in price for the raw flower and then the change in price to distillate, and now it's starting to kind of hit consumer markets as well. So kind of on that note of prices dropping, and I know a lot of farmers that got in, maybe they saw their friends grow the first year who made a bunch of money because there were very few growers, and there was also very few seeds available too. So like the genetics were usually higher quality. But now then farmers got in, and then they ended up losing a whole bunch of money because they put in bunk genetics, or they didn't find a buyer before they got it growing, or they just didn't really know what they were doing and they grew too much, whatever. So kind of on that note, as prices are starting to drop, what are some things that, I mean, as you said, you have done some farming, you're not necessarily in it right now, but what are some things that farmers can look at or can do to try to maximize their value of their end product and be able to sell it to a processor?
I think we've got a couple problems in New York that are deeply ingrained in the legislative process here, and how the laws have been rolled out in New York State. I think that less than 20% of the people who grew hemp last year are going to be growing it this year. You really have to be a fairly good scale, automated, and have the right equipment to be able to compete with the people out in Colorado and Oregon and Nevada. And New York State has not prevented out-of-state hemp in any format from coming into New York, and that was kind of, I think, something that a lot of New York farmers expected. And so there's very little New York grown hemp in the national market, very little. And like I say, I think we're going to see a lot of fallout this year of growers with prices down. I think prices are going to recover a little bit, but it has to be premium material. You're going to have really solid genetics, something interesting, maybe something that's a 50-50 CBD, I don't know. It's going to be driven by a lot of different factors, but specialty crop will be grown under contract for people. We had Gencana go bankrupt here. They were trying to make a big play in New York last year, so they're gone. You get emails here, not so many now, but literally every day of people wanting to sell us their hemp. We got plenty of our own, so yeah. We don't really need any. But I think there's a finite market for the material. I think the market's going to increase substantially over the next few years, but as far as volume, but the revenue is going to stay the same because the cost of goods is going to drop to the consumer significantly. I mean, don't be surprised to see within the next year or so, 1,000 milligram bottle of capsules for $15 at Walmart or whatever. Yeah, that's what you're going to see.
Yeah, no, I definitely, on that note that you said there's very little New York grown hemp on the national market. I know a lot of processors that were actually importing hemp because it's still as far as my knowledge, it still costs them the same amount of money to process X amount of biomass. But if that X amount of biomass doesn't have a higher percentage of CBD or even quality, then they're gonna seek other hemp that has that, and lots of companies had to import hemp. So kind of on that, to continue on this point on this topic of for farmers, so like definitely genetics is a major thing. People need to have good genetics, because if you don't have good genetics, you're just not going to get a good crop no matter what you do to it, right?
Right.
I mean, you can try to push it, but it's going to be very limited, and there's a lot of bad genetics out there. It seems it's quieting down a little bit, and there's a little bit more quality stuff coming out, but there's a lot of scam artists that grew their first or second year seed crop, and they're selling that, and it usually takes like, I think it's like 8 to 13 years roughly to like stabilize a crop. So because it's definitely, I always say to farmers, and I'm sure many other people do, you must find a buyer before you put a seed in the ground or even think about purchasing a seed, because if you don't have a buyer on the other end, it's just far more challenging. So kind of two notes here. A, what can a farmer do to find a good buyer, and then also what is a buyer looking for in a
Wow.
farmer?
Couple good questions. As far as question one, a farmer finding a buyer, it's usually buyers going out and seeking farmers. Um, what we saw last year were a couple buyers in New York who did contracts with New York growers. Um, as far as I know, nobody renewed those contracts because they still have excess hemp from last year. As far as going to try to grow hemp and then sell it on the open market, okay, that's a pretty tough deal unless you've got a really good premium material. Um, like anything, a premium material always commands a good price. And as you mentioned, if you've got to pay $10 a pound to extract material, well, you may be better off doing 15% than 7%, because at the end of it, you're going to get twice as much finished product out of it. So, that's the real consideration. And we extracted some exceptionally high quality hemp grown here in New York last year in our plant for third parties. But it was amazing, as good as anything that was in Colorado or Oregon. So the climate's good enough. There's people that know how to do it. They've just got to get their information out there. I don't really know, all the big guys are already tied in with big growers out west. So trying to get in touch with the big guy is difficult. I think a lot of it's going to have to do with if New York actually requires New York sold hemp to be New York grown hemp, which is in the regs, but whether or not they do any enforcement on it, that's the main thing. I mean, we're 10% of the US market. So if we can, put a fence around New York for the hemp growers, okay, and they've got a means to actually, grow something for our market. But without that enforcement, they don't have a chance.
Yeah, no, it's
People who have
definitely.
been growing for 5 years and already paid for all their equipment and own the land and everything, how can you compete with that? So
Yeah,
they've got
absolutely.
too much of a head start in Colorado and Oregon.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. So kind of on that note, I know there's just, I mean, definitely in many other markets, it's a kind of a state by state competition, but then at the same time, it's also very much a like country versus country competition. But kind of on that note, maybe giving projections isn't necessarily the best idea, and I'm sure you definitely want your company to be successful, and you are in New York State. But kind of on that note, do you think New York State can catch up to other states out there in terms of production, and then also in terms of quality? And what kind of like either regulations or standards would that take to even think about getting there?
Well, the regs are in place to protect the farmers in New York. It's whether or not they actually are enforced.
Yeah.
Starting January 1st, you have to be registered with the state to sell CBD products to the consumer market. So if they, and apparently from what I'm told, the state liquor authority is going to be in charge of that. And so they may come in and inspect your product or require your product to be New York grown. If that happens, then New York farmers have a chance. But I think there's a bigger opportunity in New York for fiber and grain, actually, because most years we get enough rainfall down in the southern central part of the state to support good hemp crop. Of course, that means you got pollen blowing around all over the place, so you're not going to grow CBD. But I don't think there's too many more years of CBD growing left in New York anyway, unless you're in a really isolated area, because there's going to be so much feral hemp flying around that, I think you're going to have a problem trying to maintain a good quality crop. Out west, where they're growing in, the desert, basically, doesn't matter how many seeds hit the ground, they're going to sprout and grow. So, you don't have that problem. But they can't grow fiber and grain product because it's got to be irrigated. The cost to irrigate's too high. So ultimately, I think the New York hemp market and the East Coast hemp market may be more oriented to fiber and grain than the out west hemp market.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's I definitely agree with that. The actual land, the rain. Also, many of our farmers are already set up for row crop farming,
Right.
Versus having to do a bunch of horticultural growth. Which, I mean, I'm sure at some point in time, and there's already technologies out there that are going to make cannabinoid growth a little bit more automated, but you still have to have this massive infrastructure if you want to take it from seed or even from clones or whatever, because it's just,
Oh
you
yeah.
have to put in greenhouses, you have to germinate everything, you have to make sure you're planting it just right, you have to make sure weed control is perfect. There's just so many factors to consider when you're trying to grow for a flower versus trying to grow for fiber or trying to grow for grain. They definitely have their own issues as well, but they're a little bit more plant and let it grow versus plant and keep maintaining
Oh
and
yeah.
maintaining and maintaining and
CBD
maintaining.
cannabis or cannabinoid cannabis is a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, the guys who do it good are in New York are small, 3, 4, 5 acres. You know, out west you got guys doing it like that, 500 acres, because you know at the weed because it was bone dry, so they they just hit in a big drip system and keep going. You know.
Interesting.
And,
Yeah.
So I think that's where it's heading. Because we're a dietary supplement manufacturer, we're one of the few registered in the state right now to make these things. That's going to be our local focus, making that type of product and trying to make it very affordable.
Yeah.
Really push the pricing down. I mean, hey, whatever, 49 people just lost their job. So, a high-priced product is not going to survive very long in this kind of
Absolutely.
market. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not going to survive, and it's also just like trying to get people to switch to it versus either other medications or just other dietary supplements in general. It's just very challenging when it's so expensive because it's such a hurdle for people to overcome. It's like, oh, I have to pay, even if it does do wonders. Like I've seen so many people, like for example, using lotions or whatever with CBD in it, and like at first they're just so against it because it costs so much and because it's kind of this new thing. But once they try it, they love it, but it's still just that expensive that it's still slightly out of reach. Like it just takes so much more effort for you to get it into the customer's hand for them to actually buy it.
Yeah, we got to get down to the consumer cost for CBD has to get below $10 a gram.
Yeah.
I fully see it being in the $7 to $8 a gram in the consumer hand range within the next 12 months.
Wow. And that's per gram of flour or per gram of the
per gram of CBD. So if you got a 1,000 milligram bottle of capsules, you'll be able to buy it at Walmart for $10.
Wow, that's incredible. We definitely come quite far in just 5 years. It's I mean, like when I first got into the market, basically when they passed the Farm Bill right out of high school, and I definitely didn't think we would be this far. I mean, we definitely have a long ways to go before we're really a sustainable marketplace and a sustainable industry that we can actually like point out and be like, that's the whole infrastructure line. But we've definitely come really far in terms of like the price drops and everything. It's not necessarily great for growers and for the processing side of things because prices have dropped. You can't quite make as much revenue and as much profit from it. But that also forces you to change your business model, forces you to innovate new processing practices and such. So it has its ups and downs. So kind of, I know kind of your point of view, and I agree with you, is that cannabinoids really probably aren't going to last in New York. But to kind of educate people on this topic, what are some challenges that processors hit, like either when they're first starting up or just like during the whole stage of like getting the biomass into the processing center and then actually getting it distilled and everything? Like what are some challenges that processors hit that maybe most people wouldn't think about in the beginning?
Well, the biggest one really, other than the cash you need to purchase the equipment and the building, is dealing with the regulatory burden, which is very high. Um, you know, in New York State, you have to be 21 CFR 117 and 111 compliant. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know, that in itself is a very serious investment. You're looking at high quality people. You're looking at a long time before you actually get those permits. We've been doing it for 25 years, so it's part of what we already do. But starting from scratch, it's a huge burden. And then you've got uncertain markets. It's not like you're building a factory to make a product for somebody. And I think I don't think there's any really successful hemp processor in New York right now. I mean, you know, we're here. You know, we're in business, but we're not setting any records. And as you mentioned, you have to innovate and have something different in order to be competitive in that type of market. The hemp was overgrown last year. There's way too many processors right now in the U.S. in general, which is overcapacity. So that's driving prices down. And where you haven't seen the people who are actually making the finished consumer products haven't introduced them into the wholesale supply chain at a low enough entry cost to really make a difference yet. But that's about to happen. People are really knocking down their prices to us to make powder, turn around and sell it. But just in general, I mean, wow, you know, last year distillate was 2,500, 3,000 a kilo. Buy it now for $600, $500.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't think it'll go much lower, but you know, that's good for the consumer. So, you know, now it's going to be the guys who have a unique technology or have an understanding and ability to operate their equipment very efficiently that are going to make it. I think you're going to see dozens of companies. I mean, Mile High went bankrupt. Folium, I guess, is out. There's a whole bunch in the last few months that kind of hit it. Canopy isn't doing their thing anymore. So that kind of tells you what's happened. But I think you're going to see big players really get the big pieces of the industry, selling it at whatever, you know, Sam's Club, Walmart, whoever. And then you're going to see more regional specialty manufacturers. You know, made in New York's a big deal for people who live in New York. Absolutely. You know, organic is a big deal. And I think you're going to see more organic hemp companies. We're one of the handful. And
interesting.
So, you know, so those are the changes that are coming. I'm not going to tell you any of it's easy. I think it's all difficult right now and
incredibly challenging
and very expensive to do. But like I say, we're doing okay. You know, we're going to be around, and we've got some real innovative things we're doing right now, and making capsules. So I think that's going to be our real focus here for the next few years. And we're also in the middle of discussions with a couple of bigger companies to move our powder processing in their facilities out west to have access to those markets. So
very cool. Interesting. Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. You made a note earlier that like 20%, if that, of people that are currently in the industry are probably not going to continue in the industry, or at least they'll drop out for a period of time and maybe come back later, because it is definitely a lot of infrastructure that we need to build, a lot of educating of the consumer that we need to do. I mean, we've had major influx of CBD company after CBD company after CBD company. It's overwhelming how many, I mean, so I do a bit of consulting, but how many people get on the phone with me and they're like, I want to start a CBD company. And then I have to like bring the reality to them of, well, do you have all these pieces of infrastructure in place? Do you have all this capital lined up to like actually start it? And and be able to pay your overhead while you're probably not going to be making a profit for a period of time while you're waiting
Right.
for those licensing to come through, right? There's just so many factors, because so many people, when the hemp industry kind of started up, were like, oh, I just have to plant some hemp in my backyard and I can become a millionaire. And that's just like not the case at all.
Yeah,
And
right.
you're getting
A couple people got lucky, you know?
yeah, well, that's kind of where it came from. Like in the very beginning, when there were like 10 growers and like a handful of processors, and the people that were buying those 10 growers were buying genetics that had been bred for many, many, many years, that were kind of more on the illegal side of the market, but they then were able to be transferred into the legal market because of hemp laws. They were able to buy quality seed, right? But then all of a sudden the market exploded. A whole bunch of people that weren't growing quality seed jumped into the market, and they were like, oh, we have this great seed. You can buy it for $1.25 a seed, which is just crazy expensive for a seed. And it's just, and we just got a lot of people that didn't really know what they were looking for when they were buying seed, didn't really know what they were doing when they were growing it, didn't ever have a buyer or even think about having a buyer lined up. They just thought, oh, I put it in the ground, people will come buy it for me. And so it's just, yeah, we're getting a shakeout. Like I definitely,
Huge shakeout.
yeah,
Like I say,
like the bubble is
four out of
popping.
every 5 companies are going to be gone.
Yeah.
I mean, that many are dropping out and or being purchased by somebody else, consolidated, which is a wise move, in a bigger operation. But the market's gonna mature like any of the other natural product industry markets have, where you get a huge price run up and then it bottoms out and then it kind of runs up a little bit and finds a happy place and stays there for a long time. So I think that's what we're going to see. But I think it's also going to lead to a higher quality product at the end, where you've got more GMP processors, more people who are GAP certified, growing at better conditions of managing the crop and everything else to really get the consumer a better, higher quality product.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of bad product out there.
Yeah, there is a lot of bad product. I mean, it's incredible. I go to one gas station and there's 10 different products on the shelf. I go to another gas station, there's 10 different products on the shelf. It's like, how does anybody keep this straight? Like, I can't keep it straight, and I'm pretty well educated in the market, and so I can't imagine a consumer trying to keep it straight. But you made a good point earlier on the note of having like local or regional products and brands versus like mass consumer brands. And the way I kind of look at it is like the maple syrup market, right? You have lots of, you can buy your local made maple syrup, at least in New England and such. And then you can also buy the like mass market, either Vermont or Canadian syrup that you can buy everywhere else. And so it's definitely, it's interesting to kind of see those two, and it's not exactly the same, but it's kind of similar, right? You're taking a liquid sort of
craft
source.
beer,
Yep.
Local wine, New York wine. It's the same thing. New York does have outstanding soil. We do have a great climate. We do grow really good quality hemp, and if it doesn't get pollinated, but we just were a little too late to the party. And I think the part of the problem was with the state was they overestimated the amount of tax revenue that they think they could generate from this thing. And we're too busy fighting over what was never going to happen anyway. And now I think there's a little bit more realistic approach that, with hemp, that, hey, it's a market. Yeah, we can make some money on it, but, it's not going to solve the budget problem. And, but it definitely is another source of revenue for the state, and now they're moving it underneath the health department. So, people buying New York grown, New York sealed hemp next year will be getting a much better product than they have been.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, yeah. I definitely agree.
Safer, more potent, better quality, everything about it.
Yeah, and the ag department will have less of a headache to try to manage all that stuff.
It's more tuned into what the health department's doing with the marijuana stuff. It's all harmonized regulations, so it just makes sense to have the same group manage it.
Absolutely. Yeah, very cool. So I just want to make one more note on the cannabinoid side of things, and if you want to jump into the fiber and grain, because I'm sure you'd like to discuss that as well. So as far as I can tell, you're more of you sell your products to consumers, so you're more of consumer facing in terms of where you sell your products to. But maybe for a processor or you as a buyer that's potentially purchasing crude oil. I know you've made your own pretty much, but you may be purchasing from other people.
Right.
What is a buyer looking for when they're purchasing oil, either distilled, crude oil, whatever it might be, from a processor?
Main thing is quality and whether or not they have the proper third-party certificates. Are you an audited GMP facility? We can't even bring anything in here unless you are. Otherwise, we violate our GMP requirements here. So that's the big thing. And if you don't have it, like I say, those people are not going to be in this business this fall, plain and simple. So any larger company needs to buy GMP product for insurance reasons. You know, you got to think about it. It's a food safety certificate, and shows that the methods, processes, equipment, raw materials that are used in the process meet, FDA standards. Now, FDA has not come out and regulated the CBD market, and I think they were about to, but then this whole virus thing hit and slowed everything down. But it's going to be very soon that they come out and say, look, you got to meet the FDA regs. If you're not, you're selling adulterated product illegally and shut you down. So that's kind of the way it works. But the other thing is, it becomes a quality issue. Can you grow it organic and get an organic processed material? How are you going to make yourself different? Because if you're just growing something that's going to produce 60% CBD, 2.5% THC, well, there's 822 guys doing that. But if you're growing something that's 8% CBD and 6% CBC and 5% CBG, well, now maybe you got something. But you're going to have to either differentiate yourself with genetics or quality or organic or all three.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's I imagine it's very challenging to stand out in the marketplace with so many other products that are CBD products on the market. Or
you can buy hemp CBD biomass for $3 a pound all day.
Yeah.
All day. Millions of pounds of it piled up in warehouses all over the West Coast. So, that's pretty much what I see here for 2020. We're looking forward to a good year. We're going to the value. Our focus is value to the consumer. So we're moving in that way to have volume and value at the same time and know that the quality is there. So that I think for us is our focus for 2020.
Very cool. Yeah, no, you're in a very interesting position, because now you're not just new. I mean, like, you're new to the hemp industry somewhat, right? Because we're all new to the hemp industry, but
Yeah.
you're not necessarily new to the very similar manufacturing practices that go into that. And there's just so many components to think about when it comes to manufacturing a product, delivering that product to customers, all that kind of stuff, safety and everything that's involved, that just is often very much left out, right? You go online, how do I process CBD oil? Oh, you buy a distilling rig, and you buy a boiling flask, and you have a basic lab, and you're all good to go. Maybe a walk-in freezer or something if you want to winterize it. But it's there's so many other components that it takes to actually manufacture a product that, no matter what industry you're in, that just people don't take into account. And it's
this is a highly regulated industry. You're in a nutritional product, or over-the-counter drug, really, is what we're working with here. Should be highly regulated. You have an expectation when you walk into Rite Aid or Walgreens that what you're buying is what it says on the label, made in a safe manner, not contaminated, not adulterated in any way. You can't get a product in that other products that are out there right now that are not GMP are illegal from an FDA standpoint and subject to recall, but you could be doing something dangerous. There's people out there not using safe solvents. There's people out there who adulterate material. There's people out there who grow with pesticides. There's all kinds of issues. And so it's, you know, this will help alleviate the let the buyer beware thing that's going on in hemp world right now. So as soon as you see those new regulations hit, things will change dramatically. You'll get better products.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely. I'm looking forward to it. There's definitely a lot of people in the hemp industry because there's like there's this idea around the hemp industry about just like community and we can do whatever we want, that kind of thing. But I'm looking forward to the FDA regulations coming in because it'll just companies will actually be able to plan out their years ahead and be like, we're going to manufacture a product like this because this is what the regulations are versus trying to manufacture within that regulation, but not necessarily being 100% sure about what's going to happen. So it's definitely very exciting to kind of see where the markets change. I figured we can kind of wrap it up. So thank you very much for joining us, Mike. It's a pleasure to kind of see what you're doing and learn about ways that you can figure out a way to differentiate yourself in the marketplace, and then also just look at what is the overall manufacturing that it takes and processes that it takes to get hemp from the field to the end product and in consumers' hands, because it is, as we just said, it's kind of complicated and a lot of moving factors. So kind of, yeah, just to wrap it up, is there anything else any advice that you could give to somebody that's thinking about getting into the hemp industry, and what they should look out for, and maybe if they should actually be getting into the hemp industry if they're not so serious about it?
Well, there's one main thing I can tell you is, before you make a bottle of hemp capsules, okay, the first bottle costs $2 million. After that, they get a little cheaper. Okay, that's what you're looking at to get into this business, really. And it's not for the faint-hearted. It's a tough business. And you've got to be very knowledgeable and well connected and have an advantage in some way. If you're not oriented or ponied up with some larger company in some way to support what you're trying to do, I'd highly recommend you look at it more seriously before you jump in. And I think there's a lot of people that got caught this year with a lot of product they can't sell. I know people with tens of thousands of pounds of hemp they're not going to be able to sell. I don't know what they're going to do with it. That's out there too. Got an oversupply issue. So right now, there's not a lot of room in hemp world, I don't think, unless you're into the whole fiber and grain world. But that's that instead of a $2 million bottle, that's a $5 million bottle there. So that's a whole other level. But be careful. It's a tough business, and you have to have an advantage. And if you don't have one, seriously consider what you're trying to do. That's my advice.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Mike. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your week and weekend, and we'll maybe have to do another one of these videos in the next year or so to kind of get caught up to speed where you're at and where the industry is at.
Yeah, come out and see us in Buffalo.
Yeah,
okay?
I would love to come out and maybe do a tour or whatever. We'll have to worry about the proprietary aspects, but we can definitely do something like that. That'd be great.
Yeah. Good deal, man. Enjoy it. Thank you.
All right, talk to you later, Mike. Thank you for joining us on the NYHI network. If you enjoyed the video or you found it helpful, please like and subscribe below. If you're interested in growing the hemp industries here in the United States, please join us at the HIA at joinhemp.org and make sure you check off your state chapter during sign up. If you want to find any of the links that we have below, they're in the description, and please comment to let us know what you want to learn next. Thank you very much for joining us, and have yourself a wonderful day.